Greetings. It is Thursday, the 24th of April, 2025. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Midweek Report. Preparations are underway in Vatican City for the funeral of Pope Francis. He is to be entombed on Saturday following a formal funeral. Meanwhile, the Roman Catholic Church prepares to choose a new leader. No doubt lots of intrigue behind the scenes. They've had centuries to play the politics game. Vatican watchers, yes, there are such things. Vatican watchers are debating whether the next pope will be a left-leaning woke type along the lines of the late Pope Francis, or will be someone bringing back a return to strict Roman Catholic tradition. Realistically, anyone's guess is as good as anyone else's at this point. That's all it really is. There's no inside information. The Holy See is an institution that has always operated in the shadows and away from public scrutiny. To give you some perspective on that, a Roman Catholic priest once told me that the distance from Leonardo da Vinci International Airport to downtown Rome is about 30 kilometers. But the distance from downtown Rome to the Vatican is about 400 years. Lots of talk behind the scenes that a deal to end the Russian-Ukrainian war is at hand if Vladimir Zelensky finally gives in. This does not seem to be just gossip or rumor, at least according to my sources, but we'll see. The Russian military pulverized the Ukrainian capital of Kiev overnight, as if they were punctuating the fact that the little newly made billionaire is dragging out things and avoiding the inevitable. The Ukrainian president's fortune being made possible by the American taxpayer and the many foreign countries the United States is constantly borrowing money from. If an announcement is made about a meeting being scheduled between Putin and Trump, you'll know that the deal's probably been clinched. And finally, the latest European brother war, which is what any European war really is, could finally be nearing an end. And speaking of deadly evil, the world's most sinister man, Charles Schwab, has stepped down as head of the World Economic Forum. Don't be so quick to celebrate, as whoever is next will be just as evil, only younger, and possibly more evil to boot. No word yet on what Mr. Schwab is going to be doing next, possibly retiring to a remote island in the middle of some ocean, where from within a deep cavern he can be surrounded by hundreds of henchmen staring into computer screens as he sits in an empty conference room high above, petting a white cat, and waits. Pakistan has cut off trade with India and has closed their airspace to Indian air traffic, and it appears India is doing the same thing. This follows India suspending a water usage treaty which came after a terrorist attack in Kashmir. Yeah, the same old, same old. Now, although ancient lands and until just after World War II, part of the same country, these two never seem to have grown up and learned to play nice. But watch them. Watch those two countries. They both have nukes, and they're hot-tempered. And, India and Pakistan, if you've been to a convenience store, you can see how sometimes they don't get along. Speaking of nukes, Israel is still clamoring for war with Iran. Nothing new there. The Trump administration may be wising up to the motivations of the Netanyahu administration. Given the geography and Tehran's close ties with Moscow, anything bad happening now could possibly dash any hopes of ending the war in Ukraine anytime soon. Still, the Israelis have a great deal of influence in the United States, too much by just about any measurement. And that's a disturbing fact more and more Americans are waking up to every day and is making them more and more angry. Now, one story that came to my attention over the last few days that I found quite disturbing is that in the United Kingdom, they will begin engaging in what they term research into ways of blocking sunlight. That's blocking out the sun, allegedly to halt global warming. That's insane. In fact, if you remember the movie The Matrix from 1999, that's how the world all went to hell, is that they blocked out the sun. And then the machines took over and, the rest of the story there. But it also drives home something that has been talked about for years, although dismissed as conspiracy theories, namely the intentional release of chemical particulates into the atmosphere by high-altitude aircraft, allegedly to reduce sunlight and cool the planet, but who knows what else they're playing with. I'm not going to speculate on what's really going on or who could be behind it. There's no real solid evidence, just observations of what's going on in the atmosphere, and all of us have seen this. Realistically, there's more moisture in the atmosphere than there was some decades ago, and that could explain how contrails don't seem to dissipate as quickly as they do or did. But one thing that has been determined is that the amount of aluminum showing up in rainwater and ground soil in some places is not only concerning, it's quite terrifying. Microscopic aluminum particulates do not occur naturally. They're a result of a manufacturing process and a refinement process. They do not pop into the soil that way. Aluminum's always attached to something else. Where this is coming from and how it's getting into our soil, trees, crops, and of course our bodies is something that needs to be looked into. You have to go off on what's provable and what's accurate. But obviously, since the United Kingdom's government is going to start experimenting about this publicly, well, you gotta look at the smoke and determine that there's fire someplace. I don't see why the United Kingdom would want to cut out its sunlight. They have enough cloudiness there as it is. A lot of scientists are quite insane. They really are. And just because they can do something doesn't mean they should. This is a story that needs to be followed much more closely than any of us have been doing in recent years. Really, it does. Since Donald Trump came back into office, many mummies have been unraveled and have demonstrated to many of the American people and the world how much rot and decay is under the surface of our government. Most of us are now getting a sick, nauseous feeling that we've only begun to see how bad it is based on what's floating near the surface. And what lies beneath could very well be much, much worse than any of us have imagined. That's it for today. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and share. Share with your friends and share with your enemies and hope they become friends. You can probably use more of them these days. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. This podcast originates at Substack. My address there is aureliancolumn.substack.com. And if you send me a private message there, I'll probably get it. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and remember, Clown World and the Deep State must be destroyed. Good day.